Let's tank King Garoth in Antorus on heroic and normal difficulty. Now this fight is a two-phase fight. The first phase is where you're attacking the boss, and the second phase is going to become immune, and you've got to quickly burn down some ads before the boss becomes unimmune, and then you've got to fight both. Now obviously if both the ads are up and doing their abilities as well as the boss, there's going to be a lot of problems, so it's up to you how you handle it, and it can get kind of interesting. So you'll notice that as soon as you pretty much enter the boss room, it's a big circle with three like platforms coming out. Now these platforms are where the ads are going to be spawning from. And the big circle platform, well, the boss is obviously in the middle of it. So you'll notice there's a lot of room, so you're going to want to split your raid up into two halves. And these are going to be like the DPS groups, as you could say, that are going to deal with the ads when they start getting constructed. So you want to kind of balance your raid out into two groups, one on the left side and one on the right side, looking at the boss as soon as you enter the room. And then when phase 2 begins, you're just going to split off and kill your assigned construct. It's very important that your DPS and even your tanks to one point understand that the constructs are priority on this fight. When they die, I believe they do around 4% of the boss's health, so that's kind of big. But it's also important that these constructs are not alive when you're dealing with the boss. So you need to kind of work out if you can use your cooldowns on the pull and will they be back up by the time the boss has got 100 energy, which is when he'll start constructing the constructs and when they'll become attackable. So for me, if I can use my cooldowns on the pull and by the time the boss gets to 100 energy, my DPS cooldowns are going to be back up, then by all means I'm going to use my DPS cooldown on the pull and then use it back on the constructs. However, if my DPS cooldowns will not be up, I won't be using them on the boss on the pull, and I'll be saving them for the constructs, because the constructs dying is what's going to be the difference between you killing the boss and not killing the boss. So you need to get this through to your raiders to save DPS cooldowns if they're not going to be up when the constructs are alive. So anyway, let's have a look at phase 1 and then we'll get into phase 2 and talk more about the constructs. So for us as tanks, we need to be watching out for the ability Forging Strike, and what this is going to do is the boss will inflict us with a hit for 10.8 million physical damage to everyone in a 5-yard radius, and it increases damage taken by the next Forging Strike by 200% for 20 seconds. Now for this ability you want to be taunt swapping pretty much every single hit, but obviously sometimes you're going to have to take two depending on how the boss's abilities line up. So if you are going to take a second one, make sure you have a big cooldown running or it's pretty much going to one-shot you. You also need to make sure your melee aren't stacking on top of the tank when this ability is going to go out. The boss's next ability is called Reverberating Strike, and what the boss is going to do is going to smash a target inflicting 1.5 million physical damage to everyone in a 5-yard radius. The attack also leaves behind a permanent detonation charge that explodes, inflicting 3 million fire damage to nearby enemies anytime Reverberating Strike is cast. So basically the boss is going to hit the tank. Anyone around him needs to not be around him so they're not taking the damage, and then it's going to leave a little charge on the floor. Now this charge will pulse 3 million fire damage every time you recast this ability, so people don't really want to be going near it, and this is another reason why you want to split your raid into two groups, so you're not filling one side with these little charges on the ground. The next ability that the whole raid needs to be aware of is an ability called Diabolic Bomb, and what the boss will do is going to create a bomb of fell energy that explodes when touched by a player, inflicting 3.7 million shadow damage to all players within 200-yard radius. Players farther from the impact take less damage. Now I noticed that the platform that you stood on has 3 light lanes. There's an inside, a middle and an outside lane, and the bombs will roll around these lanes. Now there's different ways you can proc these bombs, however you don't want to leave them up too long as they do seem to increase in speed, but don't quote me on that one, it just feels like it to me. You can have rogues sprint out and pop them away from the raid, you can have hunters use a cooldown, mages ice block and pop them. We had our tanks do a few of them. Just need people to be further away from wherever they're going to hit people and make sure people aren't hitting them on top of other people, or there's going to be too much raid damage for the healers to keep up with. So just proc them away from other people and use a cooldown if you're going to do so. There's many ways to handle it, it's totally up to you and your raid how you guys are going to handle this mechanic. And now the boss's final two abilities is Runa, which is a beam that the boss will put his hand up and then start shooting a beam for a few seconds. This will inflict 1.9 million fire damage every 0.3 seconds. So if you can't hit this beam, you're pretty much dead, so don't get caught in it. The boss's animation for this ability is really obvious, so just don't even be anywhere near it. There's no need to die to this ability. And the other ability is called Shattering Strike, where the boss is going to pound the ground, inflicting 600k nature damage to all players, and this is just so your healers have something to do in the fight. Because apart from that, it's tank damage and people popping bombs, and that's pretty much it, so they need something to heal, I guess. So now let's have a look at the constructs. So there's three different types of constructs. You have the green one, which is the Annihilator, the red one, which is the Decimator, and the purple one, which is the Demolisher. Now the Annihilator shoots missiles on the ground that need to be soaked. If they're not soaked, they're going to do raid-wide damage. The Decimator will target people to run out the raid, and the Demolisher, which will require people to stack up and split a damage ability. Now, as you can see, if you have two of these active with the boss, then the overlapping abilities are going to be a real pain to deal with. So the goal is, as I said at the start, to split your raid into two groups and kill these before they can even activate and start doing anything. Now, if you can't, and you've got to like plumb to the boss and start DPSing them with the boss, then there's like a kind of priority what I deal with him. The main one is get the Demolisher dead. The stacking people up on this fight is not a good idea, and that extra damage is going to be a pain to deal with. Everything else is pretty much manageable, but focusing down the Demolisher is very important. And make sure that no one's swapping back to the boss until all the constructs are actually dead, as dealing with the boss's abilities and the construct abilities at the same time is a real pain. Now, once you've killed the constructs and you get your damage right and people are learning to save the cooldowns to kill them, the boss goes back into phase 1. You just work with the phase 1 abilities again, kill the constructs off, and then that's pretty much it. There's no like enrage or anything you need to worry about. There's no extra damage. It's just about getting these constructs dead and then going back to phase 1 and dealing with the basic mechanics that the boss does. This fight's pretty cool. I do like the switching. Just be wary not to stand in the little lanes that lead to the constructs, as you'll pretty much die as there's little fire patches there. Obviously, I didn't mention that because it's pretty obvious there's fire there and you're going to die if you stand in it like any other fight. But yeah, one of the better fights, I should say, in this instance. It is very enjoyable. Like, the instance starts off really weak, but as you progress, the fights get better and better. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked my video. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more guides.